There's so much debate right now about whether or not college is still worth it. We've talked about it before on this show, and we're going to talk about it again because it's still very important. It is Freedom Friday, and you are still not free. Welcome, friends and family. It's another episode of Freedom Friday, and you are still not free, but hopefully you will be freer after this hour with Sharif El-Mekki and me. Today, we are talking about college and whether or not it is still worth it. It's very expensive. It's getting more expensive all the time. And is it still worth it for what you pay? I think we're going to cut this question up a couple of different ways, Sharif. But first, let's check in, man. How are you doing? Where are you? Your background has changed. So where are you
Oh
now?
yeah. You know what? I'm in Philly, but we are at the Children's First Summit. So last year, which you spoke at last year in Philadelphia, we're at WHYY today, convened. But it's not just a conference; it's more or less like action planning. And so, if you recall, last year we heard from a lot of students and experts, and you were one of the experts that they brought in to talk about. And one of the big things that we heard from children, from students, was that they can't take us seriously when we say that we care about them, that we love them, that we care about not only their future, that we care about our own future. They were saying, like, we can't tell based off of our current experiences. And so this is really part two. So from there were uh, action plans and committees, and now they're coming back to that collective work responsibility and accountability. They are reporting out. So this is all under the leadership of Children's First here in Pennsylvania, and Donna Cooper, who's been just a advocate, champion, agitator. My favorite kind of advocate is the agitator. She's been leading this work from multiple sectors for decades, and that's where we are today. So grateful to be out with them, with the community, but actually action planning, not just let's talk about the problem. They're like, no, we're accountable for what we said we
We're
were
not
going to
just going to
do
talk
last
about it.
time.
Yes.
And now we're here to report out, like, to the community. This is what we said. This is what we're doing, and here are our next steps. So those are my favorite type of meetings.
I think you need to replicate whatever that particular blueprint is for meeting having, because you and I get involved too in a lot of meetings. I do think that bringing people together, especially around the interests of kids, is always the way to go. Like, we have to
Yeah.
start there at least. People have to at least care enough to be coming
Mhm.
together. But man, have we been to so many of these meetings that aren't like the one that you're describing right now. Like,
Yeah.
people talk,
Yeah.
talk, 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 talk.
Oh yeah.
It's so
Like,
crazy.
they'll get together, like, you know why we need to change? Like, we knew that 20 meetings ago why we needed to do it. What are we going to do is why we should be here.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, before we jump in, I want to give you a treat. I always want to,
Hmm.
like, do something. So aside from our topic today, which is whether or not college is worth it, I do want to start somewhere else because I just want to get your reaction to something.
Okay.
Reaction videos are always good. I don't know if we have talked
Yeah, yeah.
about this before, but let's talk about this. I just wanted to show you a clip, and then I want us to talk about it. Does that work for you?
Yeah.
All right, let's
That's
do
great.
this.
Yeah, let's see it. Uh-oh.
Okay. So
I'm
this is
bracing myself.
this is old, actually. Let me
Oh,
know if you can't
nice.
hear it. All right.
Just the title, I'm intrigued.
Can you hear
I
it?
don't. No, not yet.
Okay, I better turn it up. I'm gonna put it on my mic. Hold on one second.
Okay, yeah, because I thought I heard a little faint, something faint.
There we go.
Fannie Lou and Lerone Bennett. I've never
Yeah,
seen
and
this.
that's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's see. So the setup is this is about the not the benefits. It's about the aftermath of slavery, but this is done in 1968. So this is an old view of the way people were looking at it in the year that I was born. Thank you very much. And
Mm.
this guy is interviewing a former plantation, a guy who comes from a plantation family, about what he thinks about the after effects of slavery. So this is what he has to say. Hopefully you can hear this.
Since 1672, Norwood Hasty was asked if he thinks slavery was immoral. No, I don't. Because when a slave came from Africa, he couldn't speak the language. He was totally untrained to do any job at all that would fit in with the civilization. Someone had to take care of him. Someone had to take care of him 24 hours a day. And it's pretty hard to do that unless you owned a person. So I think slavery just had to be in those early days.
Mr. Hasty, what was life like in those early days?
As far as the colored people were concerned, I feel that they were a good bit happier than they are now. They had less in the way of material things. But I can remember back in the 20s when I was a small boy, they were always singing at their work. They had a great sense of humor. Now today, they just seem to care much about that as they used to. And I think they've lost their sense somewhat, which I deplore.
I think they lost their senses just a little bit, which I deplore, man.
Which I deplore. Like, yeah, I saw that clip, man. That was a daggone switcheroo, bro. Like that, you did me dirty. Like I see LaRoe Bennett and Fannie Lou, and it's this racist cracker up there talking about this. We stole them, and then they didn't know the language. Why would they need to know your damn language, bro? If you would have left them where they were speaking multiple languages already.
There's so many things wrong there, though. I mean, he said the language. Well, wait a second. The world has thousands of languages.
Yeah.
What do you mean, the? What's the language? They didn't speak the language.
It's like them daggone New Yorkers. Every time you talk to them, they could be in Idaho somewhere, and they're like, "Oh yeah, the city." You talking about Boise? No, I'm talking about New York. Like, what the hell are you talking about? Like the city. Like,
and my favorite part too is just the burden of like somebody had to take care of them. I mean, we robbed them, we raped them, and they didn't have any skills. Man, come on. Who do you think brought most of the agricultural skills when they came here? Right?
Yeah, I mean, but to have that level of just density, like I don't even know what to call it. Like it's like beyond stupidity. I don't know what's beyond stupidity, right? And to have a level of arrogance layered on top of that, and then insipid racism embedded throughout, which you actually need the ignorance in order to get to have the pure racist thoughts. You got to be like superbly ignorant in order to embrace these ideas. It's just. But also think about like, okay, what's the intellectual genealogy of that guy? Because 1968 wasn't that long ago.
I was about to say that's my lifetime, and that guy died. Right? He died in my lifetime. But if he had kids, first of all, he came from a plantation family, so at that point in the interview, he was already kind of like in line with what had already transpired. But then he had a kid. That kid had a kid. That kid probably maybe has had a kid. Who knows? I don't. I can't tell. But that attitude that this guy has is walking around still.
Oh, absolutely. It's in the policies, right? Like, it was like, well, I was a plantation owner, but my grandkid is a judge. My grandkid is a politician. Which he could have been too. You could be a plantation owner and be in all those spaces as well, right? But it's just like these kind of things, I wish, we talk to our youth, our future teachers a lot about the intellectual genealogy and being able to trace, how do you learn how to teach Black children in a just way? And where do you trace it to? But also, what are the policies that exist now, and where do you trace that from? All these things, they have a birth mother. All of the things that we have now have a birth mother. Where is it, and when did that stream of thought get interrupted?
Okay, so we're going to move on to talk about college in a second, but before we do, on this point of genealogy, I want to show you a different video because you just said there's a genealogy. We need to look at things today and wonder where did they come from, and where's this thought lead back to? So you heard what that guy said in 1968. I'm going to give you another guy who just said something October 11th, 2023. So just recently. I hopefully, if this doesn't play, I'll be able to explain it a little bit. But
okay,
let's look at this. This is Matt Walsh.
This is the way things usually work.
Turn it up a little.
The left comes up with some crazy theory, and the right will object to how that theory manifests itself and to, how the left responds to this theory they've come up with. But as they object, they will still often accept the underlying premise itself. And you still see this with a lot of people on the right. When they hear about decolonization, now they might object by saying, well, we're not colonizers. Of course, colonizing is a terrible thing, but it's not true. We're innocent of that charge.
Now listen to this.
And of course, we aren't colonizers just because we happen to live in the United States. But also, we never should have accepted the premise that colonization is some sort of inherently bad, evil thing. It's actually a ludicrous premise. No matter what leftists meant when they say that they want to decolonize the West, the right should have opposed it on principle. That's because colonization, historically, has been a force for good throughout the world. It was the process of introducing the rule of law, public health, human dignity to certainly this entire hemisphere that we're currently living on. As we've talked about earlier in the week, before colonization, the natives were ripping the hearts out of children as offerings to their sun gods. And of course, when I say natives, and I say that term, but the tribes that lived on this continent when the conquistadors arrived were themselves not native to this continent. They came here and killed whoever was there first. But in any event, conquering them was the right decision for all.
See, I'm going to stop right there just so we know. But this is so you saw
my blood pressure to be up this morning. I can.
But you saw the previous clip from 1968,
Yep.
and you see this guy talking just from last week, right?
Yep.
And Matt Walsh, for people who are watching this who don't know, it has a very big following, and it's mostly college dropout white males who look to him as some sort of pseudo intellectual. He himself is college dropout, who, like many of them, Ben Shapiro and Steve Crowder and others, have these really outsized platforms where they have big followings, mostly of men, mostly of white men, and mostly of young people who feel some sort of need to have like a compensatory theory for why they are not doing well in life, right? If they're not doing well. So he's basically saying, we got to overturn many of the things we used to think, like about, civil rights or whatnot. Let's start with things like, colonization isn't bad. I mean, it wasn't bad. It was a force for good. So anyways, I wanted to get your blood up because, it's, first of all, this fun, but
that's what you do. That's what I'm here for.
But quick response, to what you call the genealogy from the point before to this guy saying this just last week.
Yeah. And you know what? That's a direct line. And you know what? These are the things that our students should really be grappling with, this critical thinking. And, the beauty of these kind of clips is like, first person commentary, whether it's in writing, whether it's verbal, oral, is a great thing to do side by sides and just have students analyze it. And like, okay, now what does this mean today? What does this mean in your community? If a person like Walsh believes that, how does that influence your existence, and what can you do to combat it, right? Like, and you don't even have to give your opinion about it, right? Like, they are saying exactly what they believe, and they're not alone. You can share, like, this is how many people follow them. Do you think that no one who's in a seat of power believes this? Do you think that this is like just some, far outlandish idea in America, in the world, right? And really start helping them, connect the dots, right? And this is why when Malcolm talks about, people get their freedom when they connect with the oppression of other people around the world. It's not just you, right? You have to see that this is a pattern. This is a pattern.
That's woke. With all this woke stuff in the morning, all this woke stuff in the morning. Well, I think that, it's very important for us to keep talking about how those things from the past still show up today. I mean, if you think that there's a date in history, a certain point in time where we stopped being racist, stop having discrimination within our systems, stop having the attitude that we just saw in this clip from a former plantation owner resurface in the words of Matt Walsh, who is a current conservative blogger with a big platform, you are missing the point, right? This is the reason why people want to rethink history, want to rewrite it, want to change the story, is because they're trying to change the orientation of what you believe so that they can cover their tracks, and they'll never have to pay the debt that this country owes the people that it stole from, right? This country owes a lot of debts. And people can say, well, listen, I don't owe you nothing. There's nobody alive today that was ever a slave, and there's nobody alive today that was ever enslaved. Well, okay, cool. But there was nobody alive ever before. There's nobody alive today that was alive when the Constitution was written. So I guess we don't have to abide by the Constitution. There was nobody alive today that laid down the first highways. So don't go, traveling. Don't make benefit of the highways because, you weren't alive when they were made. You are living the life that you live right now and benefiting from the benefits of a free society because someone before you laid the groundwork for that to happen and for that to be. And many of those people were unpaid for the contribution that they made for the development of this country. So this idea that you were just some independent free being that was born from out of some vacuum and have no connection to the past, and that the money that you have today, the money that you have made, the houses that you live in, all of that has no connection to anything before you arrived here on this earth, is just so patently stupid that we shouldn't even, we shouldn't even let it slide in terms of a public message that we allow to go by. So anyways, I'm going to get off this. I know we're many minutes in here. Want to talk today?
This is important.
This is important, really to correct the record. And honestly, Freedom Friday wants to be about learning and not just about one thing, one topic. So we're about to jump in on a topic, but there's so much for us to talk about and get straight because people are trying to confuse us. And we have so many of our ancestors who have told us, don't be confused. They have told us, don't let these people confuse you. So let's not be confused, y'all. Yep. So today we want to talk about, is college worth it? I feel like we have talked about this before. Is college worth it? It's very expensive and getting more expensive. I believe that the average cost for college, a lot of debt, the average college for cost, I believe, is $21,000 or $22,000 a year, which means, you are paying, 86 or 88, almost $90,000 when you include some of the other things besides just tuition and room and board and everything that you have to pay. So let's just take this, into account. I have 3 kids that are still in the pipeline going towards college. If it's going to be let's say 82 or, however much per year, well, I mean, get your mind around this, right? So that's it's $240,000 or something like that. Now, $240,000. I don't know where you all live, but in some places in the world where I live, that's a house with a basement, a front yard, and a backyard. Maybe if you're watching this from New York or one of those godforsaken East Coast places that some of y'all like to live in, maybe it's a bathroom in a house, but still, it's a lot of money, right? $240,000 for 3 kids, but just for one. $80,000. Now, what many kids are going to do, young people, I should say, what many young people are going to do, they're going to take out loans. Those loans mean that when they graduate, on the day that they graduate, there's going to be a indentured servitude for a period of time. You get this benefit, and you're going to work it off. My thinking is around, is that degree on the day that you graduate, is it worth you're going to have to pay off, right, for that period of time? Some people are 50, 60 years old still paying off their student loans. Some of them will never pay off their student loan in their lifetime. There are some people that have a student loan payment that is more than a mortgage payment, right? In some cases, depending on how much education you have. So let's start here, sir. What are you're an educator, you're well educated, you got the fancy book learning, you got degrees and stuff. So what do you say on this point?
It's always interesting. I got that fancy book learning, but I think some of my best education came right from my living room. Car rides home from martial arts class or from school and from the community, but I do believe it really depends on what we're talking about. I think overall, the idea of continuing education beyond 12th grade is absolutely critically important. I think that, one, we believe that learning happens from the cradle to the grave. And so that learning and education should absolutely continue. College can be the vehicle for that, and I would say like that's if it's in this linear way where it's kind of like, oh, this is the gate in order to be successful. If it's only looked at in that way, I think it's the wrong thing. And I think if we tell kids, and communities like, oh, everybody don't need to go. I mean, mine's going to go, but everybody does it. Yours don't need to go. I think that's also can be pretty, pernicious as well, right? And so I think there's often a balance and a molding of like what's a third way, so to speak, is actually what should be the conversation should be. As far as like, what does post-secondary education look like? How do we blend it where you don't have to wait till you graduate college to get certain learning, certain access, certain advantages, particularly access to learning? How can we bring that down to younger grades? How do we do that in middle school and high school? How do we look at career pathways in high school? But I would just say, just to add to, like mess it up a little bit or thicken it a little bit, is this idea like Pennsylvania, the context of Pennsylvania, we are spending as a state, state funding, state aid to colleges. We're spending less now for colleges. As much as everyone's talking about college, the state is investing less in that now than they were 25 years ago. And Pennsylvania students, college students, are like ranked in top 3 as far as like debt once they graduate college. So when you talk about like these prices soaring, Pennsylvania is like ranks in one of the bottom, around the bottom in the country as far as college affordability. And so we're talking about, yeah.
So you think about that. So let me ask you a provocative question just about that. Is there any reason to go to college other than economics? Like, is there any other benefit to the cost besides economics that you might do better in financially?
Yeah, I mean, the studies still show like a college degree on average earns more. And I don't know, everybody always wants to point out to some, random Bill Gates, Elon Musk, like, look, they're a billionaire. They didn't finish college.
Jeff Bezos.
Yes. It's just like,
you are not Jeff
like,
Bezos.
It's like a silly conversation to me, but you see it all the time, right? But it's really this idea of what do you want to do? Right? What do you actually want to do? What problem are you trying to solve as a youth? What are you interested in doing? And then mapping out like, okay, is this worth it? My fear of saying college isn't worth it. We already have state legislature who say, well, we need the folks who are going to make the pizza crust. Right. And so if you don't think that this person deserves college, that it's worth for them to go to college, that's worth the investment, then you're going to create a pre-K-12 system and all the ecosystem that surrounds that to help you with pizza crust makers, right? Like that's all you think they can amount to. And so then you won't invest in it. And that's my biggest concern of, is it worth it? Should they be going? Should they be interested? My thing is, they should be able to access whatever level of education beyond the K-12 that they wish, and they should be prepared to do it, and prepared not just academically. They should be prepared mentally, socially, and economically to access it, right? And where right now there's so many things that the barriers, like not only economics but just preparation. And we got to also remember, Chris, like most people don't go to college, and most people who go to college don't finish college.
That's right.
So, and it can't just be on that individual like that. Oh, that's the problem. They didn't finish. There has to be something with the ecosystem that creates those type of conditions where most people don't even finish. So what they actually leave is they leave with instead of a paper, they leave with a IOU paper, and they continuing to pay back something that they
but I feel like finish. You're answering part of the question then, if it's worth it. I mean, we know, first of all, the majority of people don't even go. I don't know about that. I think the majority of graduates at least apply. And then a certain number, it drops the numbers of people that actually get into college. And then the number drops of those who come out the other end with a degree within 4 years. And then, another group of people get through college in 6 years or more to finish. But that one question I was asking, if there is any reason to go to college besides economics, besides whether or not you are going to make more money because of going, because if it's about just getting, a broader liberal education in the world, you could get that for free, right? Like why go to college for a worthless, there's a point in the movie Good Will Hunting where not Ben Affleck, Matt Damon's character basically says to one of the guys, "Congratulations, you got a Harvard degree that you could have gotten for like $2 in late fees at a local library," right? And it's just a brutal line because it's a very expensive education that, in truth, I love American libraries. If it was just about becoming very educated on your own, you could go to a library and probably get a college level education. You definitely now, in the world that we live in, MIT puts lots of its courses for free online. There's like open courseware. So if you wanted to take, even Ivy League classes, you could take them online for free. You just don't get the paper. The reason that we want the paper, the degree, is because it gives you status in life and it gives you a level of prestige that is tradable for money, meaning you can make an economic trade for that. So I am now an Ivy League graduate, or I'm not even an Ivy League. I'm a state college graduate or whatnot. It opens a lot of doors for me financially, right? It opens a lot. So if it doesn't open those doors financially and I'm still saddled with debt, I don't think that was worth it, right? I got the poli-sci degree or the criminal justice degree or the psychology degree, and I don't want to do none of that. I don't want to become a psychologist. I don't want to become a politician or study politics or whatever. I mean, how many psychology degrees are out there in the United States with people paying off millions of dollars of debt?
Yeah, look, I almost minored in psychology because I was just fascinated by how people think. So I was curious, and so from that vantage point, I could have probably gotten read more books on psychology. Shout out to Dr. Amos. And I think Psychology of a Black Child or something, Psychological Development of a Black Child. I forget, but read that a long time ago outside of school. So the interesting part of your conversation is that I supplemented my degree with so many kind of Black and brown facing material because it wasn't in my college experience in undergrad. I went to a state school. That's why I raised my finger when you mentioned state school. I actually supplemented, unbeknownst to me. Like at the time, I didn't think about it as supplementing. I just thought about this is something that's interesting to me. This is something I want to learn about. This is something that I felt grounded me in my history. But I was actually supplementing what I was not getting in my classes. I don't think my whole time in undergrad was there ever a book by a Black author even reference. I'd have to think about that more, but I don't believe that was the case. And I was and at the time I thought I was going to law school, so that was those were the degrees. So I think it depends on the degree. I agree with you. Outside of economic, there is something around what the studies show around just social capital, learning in community with others, right? Like everybody's not a grab a book, sit in a library and read either. It doesn't mean that it can't happen in book clubs and communities and teach-ins, but there are people who want and need this structured community space. When you say just outside the hard economic levels of of all of this. So I think it does depend on what you want to study, what your passion is, what you want to do. And then some say, and I don't recall reading research about this specifically, but some say just the experience of.
No, stop it.
I'm just saying that's
I
what
could get experiences
I hear
for
that
free.
a lot.
Yeah,
I hear that
too.
a lot.
I hear too. It's like, well, especially at better colleges, there's this idea that you form a network. You get networks that help you for the rest of your life. Which again, though, it gets
social
back to
capital is a big deal.
But this is my point again.
And you don't have to you can get social capital elsewhere too.
Well, but if that's your reason for going to college, which it does, I think it's been studied and proven that you do benefit from social capital and networks if you go to college. But again, that's an economic premise. Like the idea of going to college just for an education, I think might be the dead part of this question that we're asking today. You no longer should go to college if you just want to become educated, but you don't care about money, right? Like if you care about money, college is just it's a economic premise. So that part of the question answers it for yourself. Look at this. This is the list of most regretted college majors. Now, journalism is 87% of
Mhm.
people that regret getting a journalism degree, and keep going down the line, sociology, liberal arts, and general studies, right? So I'm just going to college just
I
to be,
still don't even know what that is.
I mean, it's expensive. That's what it is. It's like an expensive trip to the library that you should have taken. Communications, education. Man, think about
And
that. 61% of people with an education degree regret their
so
college
many
major
folks
decision.
with degrees aren't actually teach. Like somebody just said they did a research and they just looked at who had degrees in education. People, and these are people of color. We're talking about like diversifying. He said just in one place, I don't know if it was the state or the city. I have to check with them, but almost 800 people with degrees, people of color in education. Like talking about like being able to like diversify if all of them were actually in education. So even that degree doesn't necessarily mean that people are using it
For
for.
what they
Look,
went to school.
I'm not using
Yeah.
my degree in that space, right? Like, and so people change,
I mean, that's a good point
often.
too, because for the people that just want to become a physician, or the people that want to become a dentist, or the people that
Yeah,
really
super
want to,
technical, nuanced skill.
yeah, or want to be a CPA or something like that, they're driven and motivated by passion to become that thing, and it's really hard work. So we want people like that to make the choice. But some of these things, I think, are like journalism, sociology. What else we have here? Communications, education, marketing, management. We have so many business degrees. So many people with just general business degrees. I think. I can't, don't make me say the statistic, but with African Americans, the number of business degrees far outpaces almost everything else, and it doesn't have the ROI on it that we should have. Some of these other majors would have a better ROI on it. And if you had a better ROI, Black earnings overall from college. So when we say college isn't worth it anymore, and I hear lots of Black folk repeating that, and those are probably Black folks with a degree that isn't worth very much, and they're saddled with a lot of debt paying it off, and it's hard for them to pay it off. And then they say, well, college isn't really worth it. Well, you chose a bad major just because somebody told you what I had always been told in my life was just go to college. Just go to college and get through, and then life will be better. Well, maybe not. Like this English language. I mean, some of these are important in the world. Biology people
That's a great
regret their
degree.
degrees.
I don't know why they
Which one?
regret in
English?
English.
I mean,
Like because there's certain things that you can get that degree.
I
Doesn't
get
mean that I
English
want to
for
be a
free, bro. I
professor.
learned how to speak English for free.
Yes, that is true. You did.
Well, absolutely, we all
And
did.
yes,
I
we
got a
did.
PhD in English, bro.
As far as like deepening communication, listen, this is what I would say. Like some with English, there's certain degrees you can get where it transcends it. Like you can go in any type of space. Here's something I learned a few weeks ago. You don't even have to be a pre-med major to go to medical school.
Mm,
You can
yeah,
major in anything,
it's gonna be
right?
hard for you though. It's gonna be hard for you though.
Well,
You
but
could,
this is what they're
but
saying. Like, yeah, but you can find other ways, right? Like, and then you can study and do these other things to pass the medical school, right? Like, there are things that you should take, right? But you don't have. Yes, you should take the biology and the chemistry courses, but you don't have to be those majors, which is a difference, right? And so
I think
this,
there's even some states where you can take the bar and become an attorney without going to law
yeah, same
school.
thing, right?
Yeah.
But imagine taking those courses. So there's two things, right? I can take, like I wasn't a math major. I took math as my elective when I was in college just because I like math, right? So it was like,
You're a
well, some people
weirdo.
were taking, well,
You're a
some people were
total
taking
weirdo. I like
theater.
math.
I had friends who were taking golf. Like
Yeah.
they were taking golf for their elective because they were like, well, when I get my business, I'm going to be on a golf course doing business. I was like, all right. Like I'm not interested in that, and I couldn't see myself having business conversation on a golf course as an adult. But I was like, math, I love math, so I took math just because. And so
If
you can
you
do the
ask
same thing.
any of my kids any of them now, if they've gotten a lecture from their grandfather about the power of golf. They have all gotten
They've heard.
they've all gotten, because he actually worked at a golf course. And one of the benefits of working at the golf course when he was young and didn't have any money was free golf. So he caddied, and he also learned to play golf, and then he got a full ride scholarship on golf. He got a full ride scholarship in Stockton, California, from Stockton, California, and went on to go to college based on golf. And then he will tell you much of his business life was attributable to knowing how to play the game of golf and golfing. So now with each of my kids, except for the last one who hasn't hit the age yet, he has bought them each a set of golf clubs and given them the speech around this is just something you learn. This is something you do, right? So anyways, let's look at some of these other least regretted majors. Are more things that first of all, criminology, for real. Wow. Do people make money? And so computer and information sciences, 72% of the people with that degree do not regret at all getting it. And then you go down the list, and these are some pretty hard, besides criminology, which maybe I don't know enough about, but these other majors feel like very specific hard skills: engineering, nursing, health. And I don't know if health is just overall health, but it feels like it's more of a technical, finance, construction trades, human resource management. So besides psychology and criminology,
criminology is back to the lawyers, right? So this goes back to the finances, right? So if it's like, my degree would be considered in the criminology sphere, right? Because it was a track to go to law school, so pre-law, criminal justice, all those kind of things fall under that. And so, but it goes back to like a financial piece, right? Like they're like, computer science make the most money and they're happy. There's so much around economics that people equate to the happiness that's what they, it's hard to separate that. And if you get a degree and you're $60,000 in debt, but you're not making, a doctor's salary, I can imagine how that would weigh on, people's, we have friends in our circle who like constantly, like if you talk to them, their debt is going to come up, no matter what. Like you be talking about, a safari, and then some kind of way, like, the debt, because it weighs so heavily on people, and it's such a big part of their, spending power, or affects their spending power, right?
So let's dig into this, because now let's talk about real people. Then I'm not going to name names, but I'm just going to say what you just said is very true. We travel in these circles, we go to conferences, we have networks of people that we know, we see them over and over again. And one of the things that I always, it's in the back of my mind that all of these people are better educated than I am by far. And I'm always in awe a little bit of how much, like I'm always interested in how'd your pathway work out because mine wasn't like that. So how did that work out that you just went and got all that education? And there are people in my world who have doctorates who you don't know because they don't tell you. They don't go by doctor, whatever. And it'll come up in conversation and be like, damn, you got a whole doctorate, like, really? Wow. And it doesn't seem as though all those years of college and money that they've put out is showing up anyway in their work life in terms of like earnings. They're all doing fine, like they're making enough money. But did you really need all those degrees to earn what you're earning right now? And was it worth it? And did you learn all that you wanted to learn from it? And I don't know that everybody tells me yes when I ask a version of that question to them. A lot of them are kind of like, nah, that was very expensive. And first of all, anybody listening in the comments, let me know if I'm wrong about this. Drop it in the comments and let me know.
Just tell him he's wrong, guys. Just
don't tell me I'm wrong. Don't tell me I'm wrong. But I have seen lots of like articles that suggest that a master's degree specifically is a hustle. Like it is a college level hustle. Like there is no benefit whatsoever to a master's degree. I find that very hard to believe because my whole life I was just taught that a BA is very good, and that if a BA is good, excuse me, then a master's must be, even better, and of course a PhD is the top of the rung in terms of, oh my God, he's a doctor, right? But I've heard that you should either get a bachelor's and leave it alone, or you should get a bachelor's and make sure that it's because you're going to be on path towards a PhD, unless you're in an occupation where a master's specifically to that occupation,
Mm-hmm.
is part of your licensure or does something for you, right? Like,
Yeah, like
gets you on
education
this stuff.
generally, you need
Education. Yeah.
your master's and to get enough for certification and all that
Oh,
kind
I
of
know where I was going with this too, though. This is the bad point that I was going to make. All these people that we know that are that educated, and I shouldn't say educated, they're colleged. The people that we know that are that colleged,
They're colleged.
they're colleged because education, being educated and being colleged are two
It's
different
beyond the
things.
walls, beyond the
Yeah.
confines.
Yeah, those two things don't always match up. Sometimes people are very colleged and they're not the brightest bulbs in the chandelier. So I think a lot of that was, how some of us buy Mercedes because, like, Dr. Umar talks about Black people are the biggest buyers of Mercedes, kind of like proportionately speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And we like things like Louis or whatever, things that have Louis Vuitton, things that have a badge to them, because it's like buying status, like that we're so hungry for in this
Oh,
world,
yeah.
because it's been denied to us. And it feels sometimes like degrees might be a version of that, getting the Mercedes thing.
It's hard to dispute that. I do think sometimes that may, because I think it's all about intentionality. Like what's your intention? What's your purpose? What is, some people get it because they're like, yo, I really want to study this. I want to be an expert at this, in this field, in this space. And I want to have enough knowledge about this to be able to share with the world, impact the world, right? Like, so it's a content that I'm like, want to have a level of expertise in and be able to go deeper. I'm curious about it, right? And that curiosity leads me to this, this degree. I do think that sometimes people just like, I want that, you know what I mean? Like anytime, I've had, folks who have, I'm thinking about this one particular sister, like no matter what come up, well, I'm a doctor. Like no matter what, like you could be talking about, the price of tea, and some kind of way she'll remind you that I'm like, but your expertise ain't in this topic, so like why should I just bow down to what you are expert in when it has absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about? To me, it just seemed like that was that's such a bad something to leave with. Like I know if I had my doctorate, I wouldn't like
I would.
But
Yeah,
in
if I had
school,
my
man, all my
doctorate,
kids call me El Mekki. And people be like,
yeah,
they gotta call you Mister. I'm like, it's like,
yeah. My wife would have to call
yeah.
me Dr. Chris, Yeah. Like my mom would have to call me Dr. Chris, Let me get a doctorate. Let me walk around here with a doctorate and whatnot. I'd be in church talking about, oh, that is Dr. Stewart to you,
Doctor, I'm doctor.
So two things that I wanted to jump
And shout out
onto.
to the folks who I did, just like back in the day, they would call people boy and girl. So like if they've earned it, like put some
Or
speckle in their
auntie.
name and give
auntie.
their title. So I'm not downplaying that. And there's some folks who just
Well, I'm going to be a little different than you on this one. I'm just going to say, like, it annoys me with other people that they have to be called doctor or something or whatever, just because you
but for
got
you,
your little,
you're like,
because you got your little
for it.
ED or something like that or whatnot, online somewhere. But for me, if I got the doctorate, that's different. That's different. I want,
Yeah, I'm just fascinated by titles and what they call honorific stuff. I'm just
I feel
fascinated
like
that people are so serious about that a lot. You know what I mean? Like
I feel like if I get a master's degree, that's better than a PhD, because being called doctor is one thing, but if you have to call me master, I mean, shouldn't you have to call me
you want an
master?
honorific associated with that?
Shouldn't you have to call me master if I get a
Master
master's
Chris,
degree?
I got my master's, so call me. Yeah, that's a whole daggone skit on The Office needs to happen. You know what I mean?
So let me say what the research says, because we've been kind of, I think, skirting around the question whether or not college is worth it. There's many different ways to look at it. I think it's mostly an economic question, and I think it's an economic question that can be answered about whether or not the economics are paying off for you. You went and got that degree. You went 80,000 or more in debt for that degree. You're paying off those loans still today. And are you in a career, or are you in a situation where what you get back from having done that is worth your monthly payment that you are paying? You put your college degree on layaway. Let's just be real. Your college degree was on layaway. And was it worth it when you finally got it? According to a survey by the Wall Street Journal, most of Americans are actually at the point now where they are questioning the benefit of a college degree. 56% of Americans no longer believe a 4-year degree is worth it. Specifically, respondents were asked to choose one of the two statements. A 4-year college education is worth the cost because people have a better chance to get a good job and earn more income over their lifetime, or not worth the cost because people often graduate without specific job skills and with a large amount of debt to pay off. And out of those two questions, Americans basically came out with no. 56% chose the latter statement, saying college is not worth it. It's not worth the cost. And 42% said that college is worth the cost. That to me is the point I've been driving home, is both of those questions to most Americans, though, are about the economics of it. It's not about, do you come out better educated? Is there a benefit to going to college so that because you're smarter now, or because you come out the other end with more facts in life or anything like that? No, it's basically a business deal. And most Americans right now are saying it's a bad business deal. And I think there are enough people walking around with the debt asking themselves, is this debt worth it? And I think there's a lot of older people who got college educated for a much smaller cost who don't understand why these young people are saying what they're saying right now, right?
Yeah.
Some of y'all listening to this paid $6,000 a year for your college degree, right? Some of y'all got it for free because some of y'all went to places where it was damn near free. And it was definitely free if you were poor or low income or even moderate income. So now you looking at these young people saying, well, I don't know if college is worth it. You're kind of like thinking, well, how could it not? I don't get it.
How can it not be? What did you get? Yeah.
How could it not be?
I mean, especially in that second question, if it's like, if you're graduating without specific job skills, right? Like, to me, that is like, at that point, if you're spending all that money and the college is just giving you, just like you paid all that money to basically have discussions, groups, basically you're having like book club, hey, read this, we're going to discuss it, or take notes for my lecture, right? And there's no job specific skill. I think that's fraudulent. So I think, it goes back to, and it goes back to early on, like being college ready, which a significant number of students who go to college aren't ready, but then also ready, meaning like, what's my degree? What am I actually wanting to do? I speak to students all the time who are like, I got my degree, just as you said, like, just because I was told I need to get a degree and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I took this, this track to get degree. I was, like, to actually have a job specific skill though, like, that one should start earlier, you know what I mean? Like those skills. And then you're like, okay, is college the best pathway, right? Like, I look at all of this as career and life pathways and trajectories. Like, what do you want to invest your time in? And is this the right track? And some of them are parallel, some of those are, can intersect in a lot of different ways. But I think if you're graduating with high debt and no job specific skill, and you have an idea of where you want to go, like, to me, that's I could see why people say like, oh, it wasn't worth it, or now I'm miserable, blah, 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 blah. Like, there's some people who were, every time Biden couldn't get some loan forgiveness, because they were cussing him out. Like, they didn't care what else he did, any other policy that was happening in the world. The only thing that they paid attention to was, did he forget? Oh, he lied to me. I'm like, well, what about A, B, and C? He lied about that. I don't care about that. I only care about this, So
I care about me. Enough about you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about me.
Yeah. So that's that job specific skill, and the ballooning cost. The ballooning cost is just nuts. I mean, when you see the percentage that it has increased over the last 40 years,
that's what they should take care of. That's what they should fix. Like, the thing about giving people loan repayment, I'm not going to take a position on that right now. I'm just going to say, no matter what, you should be fixing the system for the next generation. For it shouldn't cost what it costs. It's just, it's a dumb
absolutely
cost.
not.
It costs way too much.
Absolutely not.
So we had two comments on Twitter. One says, this depends on how you define college. I think expensive bricks and mortar model is largely outdated. The infrastructure is too expensive and often don't support the mission. Stadiums, gyms, luxury dorms, decadent meals at the top schools are more about influence than education. This is a very good point because this to me is just a point that says,
Right. If we don't have
it-
college, what are we going to do with college football? So, like,
well, and it
stop the
basically is
madness.
that
We
it's
need college
become a
football.
business.
That's the
They're
most
saying it's
important
become a
thing.
business. It's become a
Yeah.
business. That's all it's really saying.
Oh,
It's a hustle. It's a
I
business
don't
and
know
it's
if
a
it's
hustle.
never
So,
not been a business, but now I think they're definitely taking the
a gross business
Fortune
now.
500 company, thought. You need to look at their endowments and their international campuses and all that. Like it's
I
yeah, it's a
visited
thing.
Yale last year because I was invited to speak to some students. It was my first
Yeah.
time. Yeah, I know. It was like,
Ooh,
so I've been to
oh,
Harvard once and I've been to Yale once,
ooh,
and both
ooh.
times it was like walking on a movie set. It was like both times it was like, I've seen this in the movies, like I remember with this, like when I was a kid, I remember seeing movies like this, and here I am now. Look at me, extra fancy. I'm talking to people on the Yale campus,
Started
whatever.
sipping
And
your tea, lifting your pinky, like you never
pardon
drink like
me,
that. But I'm
would
at
you
Yale
happen to
now,
have some
so
Grey Poupon? you know, I can speak Yaley. But it was a
yeah.
trip to me. It was a trip more on Yale's campus than what I noticed on Harvard. Maybe it's the same, but I didn't notice it as much. But in Yale, there were just like whole buildings that were built by alumni who were like, yeah, let me give you a building. Let me give you a hockey stadium, so the hockey facilities there. I live in Minnesota, so I was like, what's that over there? That looks really interesting. It was very nice hockey facility. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that was just a gift from, somebody
Oh,
that
yeah.
went here. They'll just buy you a building, partially because they want their kids to go to that school. They want their kids to go to Yale, but the number of those buildings,
Different type
um,
of affirmative action, right?
oh my God, and the services that those students get while they're there, it's just like it's like being in a bubble. So anyways, that commenter made it more about the business. He also says it depends on how you define worth it when we're talking about college. Is it worth it? Learning is always valuable, but basic undergrad should be extremely cheap. No need
Yep.
for 200 versions of Econ 101. Nothing new in most basic classes. The industry, with quotation marks, is oversaturated with redundant content, not worth it at current prices. Now, there's something here that he hits on that to me feels like the biggest no-brainer, and I don't know why anybody has not called it the scandal that it is and the hustle that it is. Textbooks should not cost what they cost. Number
Ah,
one, in the world of digital information, there's no way you should be able to charge what you charge for college books. It's just raping kids for their money, raping young people for their money on purpose. It's a gross business distortion, perversion, and the fact that we have educators and politicians and education officials who haven't just put a stop to it, almost
mm.
outlaw it, is just ridiculous to me. You have books like Econ 101 that will cost you $100, $150, $200 in some cases. You can't buy the used one because they changed 4 words in the book to make it more expensive for the next go round. It's still Econ 101, like this commenter says,
Mhm.
but now it's Econ 101 with a different forward or a page or two difference in there. And of course, the totally unconnected professor to the industry is telling you that you need the new edition for some reason, possibly because
They added a paragraph. Come on,
they added
bro.
a paragraph,
You know, they added,
that is such an
added another 2
example
graphs.
of gross, vulgar capitalism. And the fact that we teach young people this early, that you are here to be raped as a consumer, in the places of education. First of all, if you're the type of person that thinks education should be free, this is really like a terrible and ugly thing. But the business of going to college is the thing that we should solve. We should solve the business of going to college. And by that, I mean,
Mhm.
it costs too much. Why? Why does it cost too much? We're delivering it in a very dumb way. Why are we delivering it the way that we are delivering it? Why do we need these august campuses and institutions? Maybe for private schools, fine, but in terms of a state education, you should graduate college with the potential. There's a compelling governmental interest in you continuing your education and becoming more valuable to the country by doing that. So state educations should be good. They should be cheap. or free, and they should be available to everybody who wants to go and who can get there and make it happen. It should be available to everybody. Private schools and private college should still be able to do everything that they do now. If you wanted to go to a private college and have a private education, fine. But in terms of the basics of a college pathway, we should pay for it. It should be cheap. It should be effective. It should be open to all. And we should just change the business model. So all this talk about should we repay loans, or should we repay people's college loans or whatnot, that's a good conversation, but that's like on the front step of the real conversation. It's not even in the doorway. It's not even in the house of the real conversation. The real conversation is about whether or not college is a smart economic premise for all of us and for the country, for the nation. So that's my soapbox moment on it. I know we only have a few minutes left, but I'm gonna throw something else at you that's Black specific, Sharif. Because you're a Black man. So I got to ask you Black stuff, right? Yeah, I got to ask you Black stuff, Black man stuff. So take a look at this. So Ebony K. Williams was recently drugged on social media for a bit that she had done around the fact that Black women in college should be urged to find a college mate while they're in college. And apparently I did another show on this. It's something I had never heard of, but there's this premise called Ring by Spring, which basically means that that as you graduate, you should have found your husband. And Ring by Spring is not something that necessarily is a concept within our community. It's a concept within the more wealthy white community. Find your match. And there has been lots of information research that has said that pair bonding, meaning people that find each other, generally is along kind of lines of where they're considered to be equal in different ways. And Ebony K. Williams is basically saying, Black women, if you wait, you're not going to find your person that's equal. And as a matter of fact, one of the things that I read about this comment, there was a well-established educator, I can't remember who she was, who was at Princeton and giving a speech. And she basically said, women, young ladies, this is the last time that you're going to be around this concentration of men that are worthy of you. Now, what people should know about the point that I'm making is that Black women now outpace Black men in college by far. And on some college campuses,
a lot of people.
And on college campuses, as much as 10 to 1, right? And they're being told that the brass ring is only finding another mate that is college educated. For us as a people, that's an interesting math question of whether or not we should be thinking about the marketability of our relationships in the same way that the broader world thinks about theirs, right?
Yeah, I mean,
because we're in a different situation, right? Like than they are.
Just mathematically, it doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? I never heard of Ring by Spring, but I did see a clip. I don't know who Ebony is, but I saw a clip a while back of Iyanla Vanzant where somebody was on there and she was asking like, would you date a bus driver or something like that? And she was like, if he owned a bus company or something like that, and it was, just this like, just this disconnect as far as like, what does it mean to be a couple, make a commitment to establish a microcosm of society, like a family and come together and companionship and love and blah, 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 all those kind of things. And, it was just like, what are the expectations, the communication lanes, the goals, right? I think that people, in our community are starting to have very, very different goals. And I think is, and I'm, the painful part about that is this like war of the sexes in our community has I think, an even more profound impact on our children and our communities than it may be on others. And we can't replicate what others do. Like, what I mean? Like, we should really think about what sets our community up for success and really start thinking on that lens. So we got to be really careful about the messages that we send. And I'm always like it's always a little cringy for me when we're like, just have this vast swath of like, this is what you should do. Right. But also the, like, oh, you should do this, and this is what all of y'all should do, and this is that's a little cringeworthy. But we should also like just speak like rationally and mathematically about like, what does this mean?
Mhm.
And what should it mean? What could it mean? But yeah, I mean,
There's a
yeah.
thread here. As we end, there's a thread here around commercializing and commodifying everything. So the education piece of this, is it a commercial economic product? We're not
Mm,
talking about it as self-growth or human development or any of that. We're just talking
mm-mm,
about the
mm-mm.
economics. And it's going even further when we talk about this Ebony K. Williams thing, because now marriage is a economic premise. Like, find your equals if you want to live, like live a great life or whatever. So at the
I
end,
mean,
as
and
go ahead.
Chris, just like and what's the biblical ramification about like evenly yoked, right? Like
Mhm.
that's is that always economic, and so this isn't like new, right? Like that historically it's been like, what does it mean as far as like class and it's almost like marriage has been in a caste system. If you're a farmer,
Mhm.
you're going to marry the daughter of a farmer, or
That's
an
right.
artisan, somewhere like, you know what I mean? So a lot of these conversations have been implemented in just culture for millennia,
That's
you
right.
know, and as we continue to move, like, what does it mean in today's context too?
Yeah, I think there's so much to unpack for
Yeah,
everybody on this topic, but then when you get down to marginalized communities that have unique kind of histories or whatnot and
that part.
economics going on, then we have to have a different conversation. And I'm talking when I say marginalized communities, not even all of those are the same. Like our
Hmm.
as Black folks need to have a different conversation about who you get with in life, how you partner, how you pair bond than other people do, and it can't just be like an economic thing. So at the end, I'm going to say what I think about this question. I'm going to answer the question myself, and then I'm going to ask you to answer the question, and then we will be done today. So on the question of whether or not college is worth it, this is what I think research tells us. I think research tells us that if you go to college, you live longer, you are healthier, you earn more, you actually, all of your good indicators in life go up in terms of how long you live, how many accidents you have in your lifetime, how many diseases you get. It's just weird. It's not that there is a power to the piece of paper that you get. I don't know how to talk about these psychic benefits that you get from going to college, but I do know that that's what the research tells you. If you disagree with me, please come at me, bro. Look it up. But I will say that the old fashioned go to college if you want to have a good life advice that many of us were given still holds true in so many ways. The cost is expensive, yes, but there are ways to go to college for cheaper. College doesn't always have to mean one thing. It doesn't have to mean 4 years of college. It doesn't have to mean
Hmm.
a liberal arts degree. It could very much be a network science degree or a cyber security degree of some sort that definitely is going to make you earn more. But there are so many of life statistics that improve once you go to college and you become college educated. There is a difference between people that have a high school diploma, who have some college but haven't finished, have an AA degree, a BA degree, a master's degree, and a doctorate. At each of those levels that I just said, the indicators go up. Then the improvements in your life in terms of outcomes go up. Your experience, your likelihood of ever being in poverty, your likelihood of having the ability to pay off a major expense if you have an emergency, all of these things improve at each of those levels. So I don't know why we would tell young people that college isn't worth it, but what I do think we should tell young people is be smart about how you go to college, where you go, how much you pay for it, what majors are you going for. We need a much better, robust conversation with young people at the end of the day before they go
Hmm.
to college so that they can make wise decisions. But I think that they should go if they can, if they're prepared and they can go, and it's an open opportunity. I would say, of course, you should go. That's my final word. Sharif, what's your final word on this question of is college worth it?
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. I think, very wary of people just telling, thousands, of Black students, hundreds of thousands, Black and brown indigenous students, like, oh, you shouldn't go. You don't have to worry about that. We know what the tracking system looks like. We know what a lot of, unfortunately, CTE courses look like. When I was in college, I would come home for the summer and get, one year I had a job as a dishwasher at Marriott Retirement center. A lot of the folks who were in courses who have been told by many adults that, oh, you don't need to go to college. That was their year-round job. They got me my summer job, and we were doing the same thing. And it had, so this idea of like, oh, just don't go, but no real plan, helping them with a plan was, I didn't realize that at the time. I just thought it was curious. But like, as I became an educator, I realized like, yo, this is early tracking and telling people that, oh, you don't need to go to college. And so we're not even going to invest and prepare you to go to college. Now, that being said, I think it's important, immensely important to do it, smartly, not get colleged, as Chris made up a new word, as he often does, but it's poignant. It is like true. Like, how do you continue your education but not be colleged, right? Like, how do you, and it's not easy. I'm, trying to convince my kids to go to community college first is more than a notion, like, because they are hell bent, most of them, to no, I need my I'll say half, so I had two who went, my oldest son went to a gateway to college program where he got his high school diploma and associate's degree at Community College of Philadelphia. My mother was in the inaugural graduating class at Community College of Philadelphia, and they both then transferred to Temple and got their degree. So I think there's so many different ways to go about it, and trying to avoid the massive unnecessary cost. And there are a lot of policy levers that need to be implemented to ensure that this is not just a business that is taking advantage of people who are, interested in going to college. I think it should be, undergrad should be free to almost free. And like what that means. And I think we need, we got sometimes one college counselor for thousands of students. Right. And so to even have the knowledge, right, like the information, when we talk about like poverty is expensive, it's not just that personal poverty. If a school or a district also has poverty, it becomes expensive. And guess who pays the price for that? I pay the price for that if I don't have good college counseling while I'm in, both as a student, and then if I'm a first gen, it's not just student college counseling, it has to be a family and community college counseling, right? Like, so it's not just, again, we got to move away from this individual thing and think like what supports individual, but impacts community. If I'm a first gen, it's not just me as an 18-year-old that needs to understand this, or just, it needs to be, how do we make sure like the family, they're going to get bills that they've never seen before if they're first gen. So they're accustomed to utilities bill, this bill, that bill, this bill. Now this is a whole new bill. And then,
such a good point here. You bring up that I want to ask our audience for some help with this. So audience, I'm looking to you right now. For people listening or watching this is what I need from you. This point that you just made, Sharif, in terms of being smart about how we go to college. For instance, maybe you do go to community college first for 2 years and then you transfer. Number one, there's an economic benefit to that. And two, I don't know if it's true, I have been told that it's much easier to get into some colleges after you've done the 2-year transfer thing rather than just trying to go through the front door. But this is what I need. I need somebody to either write an article or a book, or send me an article or a book that talks about kind of the jujitsu of how you beat the system when you're enrolling in college. For instance, you just said something about counselors, but I want a counselor who's going to tell me some of what you just said. Listen, it would be, here's a different pathway to do it. Let's make it as let's make all the best decisions. So give me the top 10 things to do when I'm thinking about going to college that is going to make it less expensive. You just mentioned one of them. Go to community college first for 2 years. I just need practical advice. I need an article or a book that gives very practical advice about how you become like a black belt college enrollment person, right? Like, how you beat the system as much as you possibly can, because that's the community discussion we should prepare our young people with, because they're getting soaked right now because they're making many bad buying decisions. So anyways, audience, if you have something for me, if it doesn't exist already, please write it. If you have the expertise on college enrollment, admissions, and like smart business planning around college, that could give people like a practical guide for how to beat the system. If it doesn't already exist, please, if you have the expertise, send me, or if it does exist, I'm sorry, send it to me. Send me something if you have it. So this has been another
And you know what?
episode.
Shout out.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Barbara.
No, go ahead.
Shout out to the districts and community colleges who are working for students to get their associate's degree while they're still in high school. You know,
Yes.
Dr. Watlington here in Philadelphia is working on that for future educators, right? You know, this middle college that we see in certain places, you know, that should be more pervasive, where people can get degrees while they're in high school in addition to their diploma, and makes it cheaper long term, but also opens their eyes to see, is this what I want to do, or is this something I don't want to do, right? And so, you know,
You just put a
paid
big one on.
apprenticeships,
You put a
all
big
these
one
kind
on
of
the table.
things.
You just
Yeah.
put a big one on the table.
Oh,
Like
yeah. And
early college, PSEO programs, you know, get the college
Yeah.
for free while you're still in high school.
absolutely. And shout out to Dr. Noel Anderson and Dr. Lizette Nieves, who actually, you know, they have a book out about like working to learn, disrupting the divide between college and career pathways for young people. It is a phenomenal book that, you know, it should be for educators, policymakers, family, community members. Like, it really centers how to do the learning early on, and kind of flattening a lot of these barriers.
Working to learn. There you guys, you see it there. Sharif, you always add, see at the end of the show, like lots of stuff just starts popcorning up. But this last one that you just mentioned, early college, shout out to Geo Foundation charter schools that have people in Gary, Indiana, young people in Gary, Indiana, earning associates, bachelor's, and even piloting licenses to be a pilot while they're still in high school. As a matter of fact, they have 2 Black pilots that came out of a high school program. They got it
now
while
we're
they were
talking.
still in high school. If you know how few Black pilots there are, it has to amaze you that there is a school network that is in a very impoverished city that is getting people their piloting licenses before they even graduate from a high school. They have a couple of students that actually got their high school diploma and their college degree on the same day. Like, they graduated from both on the same day. So that could be another
And that
avenue.
stuff is
of, you know,
doable, right? It's doable.
That's right. That's right.
Debt-free college. Let's go.
Let's do it. All right, y'all. Well, listen, this has been another episode of Freedom Friday, and you are still not free, but hopefully you are freer after this hour with Sharif El-Mekki and me. When it comes down to this question, is college worth it? Send us something and let us know. You can reach me at chris@brightbeam.org is my email address. And Sharif, you can find him all over because he's in every room where people are important. And he's just like, he's on it, like every media platform.
That's in my living room. That's when I'm in the room with the important people, is when I'm in my living room. You know what I mean? So
you can find him on Twitter at @SElmekki. And you can find me online also at Citizen Stewart. We appreciate you all as always. Please share the show with others. Leave us a review if you haven't already, and subscribe so that you know when all the shows are